Hello everyone, this is Jin'taan, and today we're going to be talking again about the Winter War. And more specifically, we're going to be talking about what I see as one of the major turning points of the war in the favour of the Stain-fragging coalition. But before we get into that, I'm sure you're wondering why I've put in a pair of black balls here as opposed to my face. And no, the answer isn't that they look better than me, although that is also true. These are in fact relatively sized circles which show the amount of ISK lost by both sides in the war. And I will be honest, it was a lot closer than I was expecting it to be, especially once I pruned the losses to only areas where the war was actually taking place. Still, the cost of this war so far, even though it has been relatively short, takes place on an astronomical scale, really, with both sides combined losing a total of 4,499,490,649.06 ISK, with other third parties such as Proviblock or the majority of PanFam adding another 1.35 trillion to the ISK lost in the area, taking the butcher's bill of the conflict to 5.4 trillion ISK. To put that in perspective, that's about 2 Titans a day in the conflict. Or to use my own personally favoured unit of relative measurement in EVE, that comes out to 4,496 Drakes worth of ISK lost a day. But we can dig a little deeper than just the raw number of ISK lost. We can actually split up the losses by each individual coalition within the super coalitions to find out who really has been punching above their weight in terms of throwing ISK into the furnaces of catch. As you can see from the Stain-fragging side, this was overwhelmingly walking in circles please ignore, which reliable sources have informed me is the real name for the Test, CO2 and Drone Walkers led coalition. And as well as that, the FCON-led Phoenix Federation, with the both of them accounting for around 2/3 of all Stain-fragging losses. And of course, whilst this doesn't tell the whole story, as it really is just ISK lost and not ISK placed on the field, or even ISK lost per member in the alliance, it just goes to show who really has been doing the majority of the heavy lifting here. And as such, I'd expect them to take a decent percentage of the spoils of the conflict. On the other side, however, things are relatively even, with the Imperium losing about 200 billion more than Stainwagon. If you want to try your hand at making your own graphs, or if you just want to find out where your alliance lands on the scale of things here, I'm going to leave a link in the description to the Excel sheet that I created for this, which breaks it down to both an alliance and region level if you want to dig a little deeper. And a shout out to Lucia Denard for helping me to put this all together. So, with our numbers thoroughly crunched, let's take a look back at the theatre of the war, Catch. Here it is as we left it a week ago in my last video, and here it is as it currently stands today. As you can see, some huge gains have been made in the east by walking in circles please ignore, with Tactical Voltage also being able to acquire some new systems to operate out of, and Triumvirate, the leader of Vanguard Coalition, taking a little bit of SOV in the north of Catch. But this slow, grinding wear down of Stainwagon's territory isn't what I want to talk about today. What I want to talk about is how this fight was considered not only a loss by the Stain Swarm coalition, but has led to the effective seeding of Catch in general by all of the involved forces, which, as talked about in First Blood, leaves the majority of Stainwagon's holdings incredibly vulnerable to assault. The first thing to look at here is the location of the fight itself, 36N. This is a system we've talked about previously, as it was one of the footholds acquired by the Stain-fragging coalition inside of Catch very early on last week. And as such, Stainwagon had been keeping an eye on what was going on in the area, hoping to catch someone who is moving in an unsafe manner and take advantage of it. And wouldn't you just know it, that managed to happen with a test Titan warping into a bubble camp set by Stainwagon. I won't go into the exact details of the fight, but if you want to hear a blow-for-blow account, I can recommend Salavan Hardin's piece on the engagement. I will link that in the description below as well. But as the dust settled and a Titan dead for both sides, suddenly Goonswarm realised that they were in a hell of a lot of hot water. And to try and explain this, we need to look back again at Catch, or more specifically where the Imperium supercapitals were staged from, EX6-AO. Now, when looking at the ranges that supercapitals have from this system, the usage of this system in particular can seem sort of peculiar. However, with simply a hop, skip and a jump to HY tac, Suddenly it starts to make a tiny bit more sense, giving the Imperium supercapital forces the ability to deploy themselves almost anywhere in northern and central Catch. So, great, one might think. Whilst the range differences from their staging to the now compromised border regions of Catch make it difficult to assault directly, they still have an effective jumping off point that they can use to project their capital powers onto the rest of the region. However, there was just one catch. The Imperium did not have direct control over HY TAC, which meant that after this engagement, with their dicks firmly on the table, they found that their retreat had been effectively blocked off, as without communicating it to them, AAA had Cyno jammed the system, meaning that they were completely unable to use it as a midpoint to get back to their staging. And despite frantic efforts on both Stainwagon and the Imperium's sides, they were unable to reach anyone within AAA who had the roles to offline the Cyno jammer, leaving 30 supers and multiple more titans completely stranded in the middle of enemy territory and well within range of MB TAC, which is walking in circles please ignore's staging system, meaning that the entire weight of the enemy's supercapital fleets could be effectively engaged against them at any time. This left the Imperium's capital fleet in a nerve-wracking situation, as they waited for some other supercapitals that had been able to log in EX6 to incapacitate the Cyno jammer that was preventing their retreat. The next day, the Imperium made a critical announcement, and whilst it obviously can't be confirmed as a direct response to the incident the previous day, I can't help but think that the previous day's events were a signal that this had to happen sooner rather than later, as they moved their capital fleet one step backwards, from EX6 to 4-0, which is just one jump away from their proxy-held region of Quirius, minimizing their own ability to engage capitals within the region of Catch. And this seems to have signalled what is effectively the end of the war in Catch, with Stainwagon making good on their name and packing all their shit up, and moving it right back to Stain, amidst the ongoing siege timers that are being placed upon VTAC 3, their previous staging system. It is worth noting here, for those who aren't aware, that Stain is an NPC nullsec region, which means that unlike SOV systems, you cannot be effectively locked out of your stations there, as they are not really yours to begin with, but owned by NPCs, hence the name. And while Stain is obviously close for subcapitals, it will become increasingly difficult for Stainwagon to commit capital assets to fights in the region of Catch. In addition to this, we've seen some of the other alliances of Stainwagon begin to filter out from Catch itself, with the Volition Cult and Cold Steel Alliance both making an exit towards the neighbouring high-sec region of Carnid in preparation for their announced move towards the Quirius Fight Club, leaving Catch almost completely abandoned apart from the expected insurgency from Stainwagon. As such, it seems inevitable that it will fall, and fall relatively soon. However, with that in mind, it's important to keep an eye on the rest of the war zone itself, as Stainwagon's territories were relatively vast. One must ask whether the Stainfragan coalition will be content with holding Catch, Impasse, Fetherbolus, and Amist, or if they will look to dive even further into Stainwagon's territory, and take Esoteria and Paragon Sol as well. I would argue that this is relatively likely, given the fact that they've been able to now effectively cripple Stainwagon, and the break in their relationship with the Imperium will impede any possible deployment of supercapital or capital assets to protect these final two bastions of Stainwagon sovereignty. That's not to say that I don't expect a fight to happen over the region, Stainwagon having proven previously their effectiveness as a skirmishing force against invaders. I would expect to see them harassing any Entosis ops in the area for a long time to come. But given the immense momentum from their victory in Catch, I doubt this will impede the Stainfragan coalition in any way, and slowly but surely they will wear away at these remaining areas, leaving themselves as the head of a new southern power block. And whilst I won't go heavy into the analysis of what this block's impacts on the overall politics of the South will be, I want to save that for its own episode if I get a chance. The immediate implications are very, very clear. The Imperium now finds itself surrounded on all sides by hostile entities, with its only major allies being those of convenience in the Drone Region Federation, and given the events in Catch, this is starting to look shakier than ever. Still, that's all for this week. I hope this has helped to really clear up just what happened in Catch over the past week, and explain why everything seems to be falling apart so quickly now. If you have any questions, I'd advise you to post them in the comments below, as I do read and try and respond to any questions I don't feel are answered in the video itself. And feel free to give that cheeky subscribe button a little nudge. It won't hurt you, I promise. So, with all that, take care, and fly smart.